Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics and a video today about something. This actually came out last week, although I did not get to dig into it or mention it. And I know a lot of people had a lot of questions, so going to hop into this today because Britain carves out an exemption for gold clearing banks from Basel III. Is Basel III over? Did it mean nothing? Was there any significance? We will dig into that today. Although, before we get started, quick note, today's video brought to you by Bluestone Resources, who continues to have some good news because here they increased their Cerro Blanco mineral resource to 3.1 million ounces of gold, 13.4 million ounces of silver. This is their Cerro Blanco project located in southern Guatemala. You see gold measured in indicated resources total 3.1 million ounces, grading 1.5 grams per ton, an increase of 142,000 ounces of gold over the previous resource. And Jack mentions we're very pleased with this significant upgrade in the mineral resource, which is a culmination of the additional infill drilling completed this year and during the second half of 2020, along with improved understanding of the geology and mineralization. So great to see things are going well there. Thank you, Bluestone, for bringing everyone tonight's episode. And even before looking at the silver price, we'll take a look at gold, which dipped below 1,800 this afternoon for a brief period. Quite volatile and choppy here. See quite a spoof downward the day before. Certainly, when you think about it, this was just about a year ago when we saw gold cross over 2,000. It seems like yesterday, although it's funny, I remember being in the Sprott conference and I went into the First Majestic booth, and this was late July. So I'll bet gold had probably crossed 1,900. I was talking with Keith Newmeyer of First Majestic Silver, and he says, I wouldn't be surprised if we see it break through 2,000 in a month or two, or it was some short period of time. And then it ended up happening within a week or two, actually. Not surprising. I mean, when you think about the pressure that is around these big handle numbers, as they call them, 2,000 is the handle. So a lot of stop orders placed, popped up quickly, came back down quickly. And what's interesting is that we've only seen the hyperinflation campaign accelerate since then. I mean, it's not like the Fed reduced its balance sheet or anything like that. If we take a look here at the Fed's balance sheet, looking back late July 2020, we see slightly under 7 trillion. It's just accelerated up to 8 trillion while Janet Yellen and other central bankers talk about tapering. So pretty interesting to see. This was when silver got close to 29 just about a year ago. We've had money printing galore, not just the Fed, but banks around the globe. We're seeing 5% inflation prints, even bigger producer price index prints. And yet gold and silver has come down over that time. And I would suggest a takeaway there is that, especially in a market we know is rigged, that's how it's rigged. So that just when you think, all right, the money printing should be forcing it much higher, they hammer it. And that's how the price has been kept in check for the past decade, because people have been frustrated. And really for the better part of the last 10 years, they would often sell on those days. And the banks kept getting out of the short position and did the same scheme over again. Although I'll reiterate that one of perhaps the most significant reason why I continue to remain incredibly optimistic. Hey, again, I don't know. I still believe it will be sooner than later. We'll see if that's right. But whether it's next month or next year or 5 years from now that people understand why these prices are coming down, and you can go look on the price and volume chart and people understand, and more importantly, the bullion dealers, you've heard from Andy Scheckman, but call your dealer, call the other dealers, find out what happens on days like yesterday where the price is down on no news, except for a big volume spike. And if people are going to keep buying metal when that happens, I mean, that's what I've always thought will ultimately end this. So anyway, a lot of money printing and the prices of metal are lower, but for a lot of these mining companies like Bluestone, still doing quite well at $1,800 gold or $25 silver. Let's call it $25, $30, 30-cent silver, because we did have a bit of a silver rally today as well. So with that said, getting back to today's headline story, or last week's headline story, depending on how one does the accounting, Britain carves out exemption for gold clearing banks. And I know a lot of people were saying, all right, well, that's proof. Basel III came and went. Nothing happened. I suppose it would only be fair to admit, I don't know that I could prove for sure that anything is happening. Although I find that that's the way financial markets, much like a poker game, works. It's not necessarily, usually don't get 100% confirmation of something before it's priced in. And sometimes if you get even money bets on 80% favorites and you do that consistently, then you're becoming the house or the blackjack table. So that's what I look for. I combine all the different things, especially that have happened in the past couple months. I'm still stunned by the LBMA's silver report and then their acknowledged miscount. And when I look at the trading activity, when you see the extreme way, I mean, it's been bad for years, but really since February, just reminds me of one of those Indiana Jones movies where at the end, the Nazis are getting all frantic and scrappy and just like little roaches getting any of the gold they can and running. That's what it feels like when you see basically any trick in the book, which is basically always the same trick in the book: hammer it lower and hope you can knock people out, stop them out of their trade and get their gold and silver from them via the COMEX. So how much longer it goes, we'll leave that aside today, but I don't get the feeling that nothing is happening. And as I've thought more, again, this is just my opinion, I cannot prove it to you, I'm not going to try, but it just has always felt that someone in this deep state system has to realize this is on borrowed time. Just like we got to the London gold pool, gold was 35 bucks, silver was $1, $2. They're both a lot higher since then. All right, silver obviously clobbered since 1980. Gold did fine since 1980. Gold's beaten the stock market since 2000 as well. You know, I can't make the timeline, or maybe we can influence the timeline. In fact, buying silver, or as I mentioned in a video that'll be coming up shortly, I did find 2 oversight committees for the CFTC. So there's what we can control, there's what we can't control, and especially with these banks, I've just always priced in that these are people who are going to do lie and cheat and steal, use politics, use any health scenarios, any sort of thing to create chaos. I think you're seeing an acceleration of that in the realm of things I believe but cannot prove. I think we're actually in the middle of the destruction of this system right now. When you look and see some of the things out there that are happening geopolitically in the US with the Biden regime and add all of this up, I think we're seeing it happen now. I don't think that we're going to see necessarily the events correlate with a linear gold and silver price. That's always the way they've been manipulated, so that when people would be most likely to buy, the banks will be there to hammer, and it will go on until it can't, similar to the Fed. So that's what I imagine is going on behind the scenes. And if you told me that this was the beginning of a rollout of some sort of reset that wasn't going to happen overnight, but would happen over time, that would make a lot of sense to me. And interesting, because you see the beginning here, banks clearing gold trades in London can apply for an exemption from tighter capital rules due in January 2022, in about half a year. British regulator said, removing what some said was a threat to the functioning of the market. I'll look forward to following up with Alistair MacLeod. I know he thought adamantly that this was going to have an impact. I'd be curious his take, because here it says in London can apply for an exemption. Doesn't mean they've been given. Also doesn't mean that they won't be given if they apply, but just interesting to note the language used, apply there. London is the world's biggest hub, and the Basel regulations were designed to make banks more stable and prevent a repeat of the financial crisis of 2008, 2009. And I know these guys are Keynesians at heart, but you got to figure someone somewhere realizes this system isn't the most stable thing going. I also factor in that the people who do such things usually don't get along that well once it's me versus you, and they turn on each other, get greedy, or want a bigger cut. I think a lot of these things are happening behind the scenes, and trying to verify as much as I can. So feel free to ignore any of this today if you wish. I mean, I can say these are my genuine, honest beliefs. They're not fact, but we'll leave that there. And anyway, LBMA has lobbied against these, shockingly enough. LBMA also said they were scared that they were going to run out of metal, out of silver during Silver Squeeze weekend. So JP Morgan, interestingly, declined to comment. They don't seem to have much to say about silver, even though I saw Jamie Dimon had an announcement on a big bonus today. So go figure that. And again, I'm sorry if somebody wanted a specific answer. Basel III means this or that. I don't know. Again, you can't see the other person's cards. But based on my career in finance and studying politics and all these different things, it sure seems like there's something happening behind the scenes. I won't claim to know exactly what, but the fact that silver is lower, I'm happy that I have income coming in these days and I'm able to buy more. And yes, there are times where I wake up and, like, geez, is this ever going to end? But when I'm able to take that step back, see it from a longer term perspective, I think that's the challenge. It's rigged as it is, but you make the best of a situation, and hopefully that is helpful. Note from yesterday, I had mentioned that China's producer price inflation index was up at 9% year over year, and I wanted to make an amendment because that was May. Turns out that we did have the June reading in here, and it was close at 8.8%. So 2 months in a row doesn't seem so transitory. Again, if you're wondering, U.S. producer price index, we saw 7.3%, which I would imagine to some degree would naturally seem logical that could be expected somewhat to flow into the consumer price index, which was over 4% 2 months ago, then 5% last month, and I believe it was 5.4% this month. I'd take an even money bet that it cracks 6 next month. We will see how that one goes. Now, putting that in context, because I would suggest that most periods of time, if you said that the dollar was going to have 5% inflation, that people would be like, no way. That's a lot. It's like winning a baseball game 45-2. Now you see here, if you look back, you had a big spike in 2008 when the housing bubble was overheating. Then this looks like early 90s, let's call it. I would have to think a bit more. Now here you can see a spike in the early 90s. And I'd have to think a bit more about that one was around, although again, you can see the big spike in 1980 and then the late 70s. So at least in a world where the Fed claims to be maintaining price stability, you can see we're jumping up pretty high here. And I expect that to continue, especially when you look at what's happening monetarily. And with that said, that is why I dig into silver. I'm a big silver fan. And another set of drill results out. I mentioned this one because we'll have Greg from Silver One coming back on in the next couple of weeks. Silver One intercepts 1,070 grams per ton silver and 1.48 grams per ton gold over 4.57 meters. So great to see things continuing to go well there. And we will be checking in, taking some questions with Greg. So hit the subscribe button and notification bell to stay posted on that. And one last story here that I thought was interesting. This is more of the geopolitics. I wouldn't claim to have the first clue what's going down here, but Haiti's interim prime minister, Claude Joseph, agrees to step down. Either case seems to be quite an unfortunate situation because, let's just start here. Prime Minister Claude Joseph agreed to step down and hand power to the political challenger in a bid to stabilize the embattled Caribbean nation following the assassination of President Jovenel Moise on, I believe it was last week. Country's election minister, Matthias Pierre, said on Monday that Joseph's resignation forms part of a broad political agreement encouraged by the U.S. and other powers. Mr. Joseph will yield power to Ariel Henry, a neurosurgeon who was appointed Haiti's prime minister a little more than a day before Moise's killing. So it reminds me a little bit of what we've heard in Venezuela and similar, what John Perkins wrote about in Confessions of Economic Hitmen. I hope that's, I don't hope anything. It just seems unfortunate that some of these things are happening. And here was the other thing that was mentioned. He said the statement by the U.S. and other influential ambassadors to Haiti, known as Core Group, paved the way for Mr. Joseph to step down. It was primarily pressure from the Core Group and the U.S. The U.S., the Organization of American States, I think will play a big role in how to organize elections in this environment. I'm not quite sure why the U.S. is deciding how things should be done in Haiti, and hope, well, we'll just leave that at that. I don't know if any opinion is necessary on that. Just sending prayers and warm wishes to everyone involved, and hopefully the people can get back to deciding their own future. And lastly, one quick note, I did make a video recently about the CFTC and how I found some oversight committees that people can contact. If you prefer supporting some of those initiatives financially, well, that certainly always helps the cause. We do own a 1,000-ounce silver bar out of that total now, so nice hedge for action, legal action against the CFTC. This link is always in the description fields in the bottom, so feel free to find it there. You can go there and click right now if you'd like to contribute some money that will be used to take legal action against Ralston Benham and the CFTC for tamping down the silver price and really stealing money right out of your pocket, even after you were smart enough to realize the U.S. government was never going to stop printing. So anyway, if you'd like to participate there, link in the description field below. One last time before wrapping up, I'd like to say thank you and congratulations to Bluestone for the good news and increasing their mineral resource. And with that said, going to wrap up for today, but to find out a little bit more about Bluestone, well, there's a video coming your way now.